All right, I got to move on to this really weird story. The ambassador, the Syrian ambassador to the United Nations, Dr. Bashar Jafari, made a cryptic remark a few days ago at the United Nations. He was talking about that, his nation was being falsely accused, that these were false flag, fake chemical attacks. And, so you were listening to his comments and it sounds, normal what he's saying. But then he mentioned genetically modified entities.
Yes.
And I had to stop and rewind and listen to it again, and listen to it again, listen to it again. I want to play the video. Again, this is Syria's ambassador to the United Nations. We're only going to play the part where he's talking about genetically modified somethings in his country. Watch this.
We say to Saudi Arabia today that we eliminated its terrorist tentacles in eastern Ghouta, and I mean Jaish al-Islam gangs. Yes, we say to Qatar and Turkey that we eliminated their terrorist tentacles in eastern Ghouta, and I mean Al-Nusra Front gangs and Faylaq al-Rahman gangs. And I say to all those who exported to us armed, moderate, genetically modified opposition that we eliminated these toxic exports. And we call upon those exporters to bear the consequences of their actions, as some elements who survived would return to their original countries.
All right.
Doc?
We've been doing True News a long time.
This is one of the weirdest things I've ever reported on.
Yeah.
Did he say that the U.S. or some Western country exported genetically modified soldiers into his country?
Yes, he referred to them as chemical weapons. Toxic substances in his country.
Nephilim. They're
Modern
Nephilim.
That's what it would be.
That's what we're dealing with. He's talking about Nephilim. The Nephilim are back.
This isn't the only time he said that either. I mean, he's made that reference before.
When did he say it?
In 2016, the same ambassador, referring again to the jihadists, the ones that Saudi Arabia's put in, other people who've been armed, he brought this up in regard to Aleppo. He said that genetically modified fighters are being used and exported into his country. We actually have that clip too. He said this at the United Nations.
And this is 2016.
2016.
All right, let's watch this one too.
The Syrian government is still ready to evacuate remaining unlawful armed groups in the terrorist pockets in the eastern part of Aleppo. And it has organized yesterday a convoy to evacuate 3,750 terrorists and their families. Unfortunately, some member states in the Security Council and the mainstream media continue to defend and support the genetically modified armed Syrian opposition, moderate by definition, while turning a blind eye to the crimes committed by them.
Genetically modified soldiers in the Middle East.
The jihadists, he's talking about ISIS.
Yes.
He called them genetically modified. I mean, this is, Doc, they're Nephilim.
Right.
Now, in 2015, ISIS, one of the most shocking executions was when ISIS beheaded 21 Egyptian Coptic Christian men.
Right.
And I remember a lot of people talking about how tall these men were.
Right.
Because people were saying, hey, those aren't Arabs. They're too tall. They look like American basketball players. We've got a video. I want to go ahead, we'll show it, and we'll just keep talking. But this is what they were referring to, that these men looked abnormally tall for being Arab soldiers.
Right. Clearly taller than their captives. Because you look at the head. The head doesn't even come up to the shoulders on some of these soldiers.
I mean, you're talking about 7.5 foot tall terrorists here in this video.
So now we're talking, think about this, was the ISIS invasion, which came from, I mean, it just appeared, ISIS, it just appeared.
Right.
Nobody had ever heard of ISIS. And they're going through Syrian and Iraqi towns, cutting off people's heads and slaughtering people. Did America produce these creatures in laboratories? Did we grow these things and then turn them loose on the Christians in the Middle East? For dear God, how wicked and evil are we?
And for the Syrian ambassador to come out publicly and say something like that, saying these are genetically modified entities, soldiers, terrorists operating in this region. I mean, I was shocked to hear that today. This is the first time I had heard anything about this.
Well, you know,